Autism. Breathe. We're gonna get through this.
My name's Josh, and I'm on the autism spectrum.
I'm exaggerating, but the societal consensus on autism for long before I was born was that it was either a terrible affliction to be cured or requiring constant care, that or a cause to lock somebody away from society in some ward or another. Well, along with being very wrong, these assumptions are actually damaging to the autistic community. We're still, today, really figuring out what it means to be autistic, but while we wait, I'll do my best to catch you up. Let's start at the beginning. According to Dr. Ananya Mendel, quote, autism as a label was first used by psychiatrist Eugen Bleuler to describe a schizophrenic patient in 1908. This patient had, quote, withdrawn into his own world, end quote, Mendel writes for Medical News and Life Science. Bleuler got autism from the Greek autos, meaning self. Then, in 1943, American child psychiatrist Leo Kanner started using the term to refer to a wide range of common symptoms he noticed among some of his patients. These symptoms included, quote, difficulties in social interactions, difficulty in adapting to changes in routines, good memory, sensitivity to stimuli, especially sound, resistance and allergies to food, good intellectual potential, echolalia, the propensity to repeat words of the speaker, and difficulties in spontaneous activity, end quote, Mendel writes. Already, the disparity between these two early examples should seem pretty obvious. On the one hand, we're talking about a schizophrenic individual, drawn so deeply within themselves that they have no ability to communicate with the outside world. On the other hand, you have some children who are socially awkward, repeat stuff, are smarter than average, can't eat certain foods, and get really uncomfortable in crowds or loud settings. I don't need to point out how different those two things are. Still, going forward, children who met Connor's definition of autism were burdened with the association that came from Bleuler's. So then, what is autism? Well, it doesn't exist. According to a report from Nature.com by multiple professionals, including psychiatrist Charlo Esbruja, quote, autism spectrum disorder is a construct used to describe individuals with a specific combination of impairments in social communication and repetitive behaviors, highly restricted interests, and/or sensory behaviors beginning early in life, end quote. What this means is basically, autistic is the label used for an overlap of these varying symptoms described. However, how do we know what causes the symptoms? We don't. The same article goes on to discuss studies done post-mortem on the brains of those on the spectrum, in which there was found to be no gross pathology present. In other words, they didn't find something within the brain that specifically points to autism. There's no medication for autism either. In the Nature article, they discuss how psychological intervention can ease some symptoms into adulthood, but some of those on the spectrum will likely need more support than others. So, what about me? I'm on the spectrum, right? What does that look like? Well, I get overwhelmed very quickly and very dramatically. I shut down and lose the ability to articulate anything I'm thinking. I'm very sensitive to noise. I always wear earplugs to concerts, and I prefer to walk around with my noise-canceling headphones on. I frequently come off as abrasive or unrefined just because I don't fully understand social rules and cues. I'm very literal. For example, I saw 7-Eleven was selling, quote, facial tissue the other day, and spent a good 50 minutes trying to figure out whose face they carved up before I figured out it was probably just tissue for your nose. You can see, though, how each of us on the spectrum has a smattering of these different symptoms associated with autism. That's what we know. Anything else is conjecture. And while we're talking about conjecture, let me offer some of my own. Let's refer back to Bleuler's original definition of autism. A schizophrenic patient who is so deeply schizophrenic that they then retreat inside themselves. This patient, though, does not have autism, they have schizophrenia. It is my hypothesis that autism is nothing more than a label given to those too different to be comfortably placed in a different box by society. It's a term there's still a lot of taboo and a lot of discourse around today. I don't think they'll ever find an answer, though, because there isn't one. We're all just living our lives, but if you make those in charge uncomfortable, they'll create a vague and general label and set you aside. I encourage you to read about autism. You'll probably find it's not what you expected. So then, what do we do? If things really are this bleak, or even if I'm wrong, what's next for the autistic community? Well, more recently there's been a push for the term neurodiverse to refer generally to things like autism, ADHD, social anxiety, etc. To me, this is necessary. Growing up on the spectrum, first and foremost, I felt alone. Nobody understood me, and so they were afraid of me. Neurodiversity provides a sense of community that I discovered through autism to a much larger portion of the general population. The autistic community has been incredibly helpful and loving to me, and I hope that expanding and eventually doing away with definitions will provide that help and love to others who need it.